So in practice, there are a couple ways that this usually starts. I think most common is with the teacher providing some kind of context. So usually an overarching concept from the state standards in the content area is talked about. The teacher may try to pique student curiosity with some type of experience that makes them wonder about the content, or maybe with a provocative question that doesn't have a clear right or wrong answer that gets people in the class asking other questions about clarifying kinds of questions and so on that start to drive that questioning process on the student side. And then teachers usually tend to break up students into small groups around their interests. So I've seen it where teachers will list all of the student questions up on the screen and then start to categorize those things with the students. And then from there, you have maybe, instead of 30 discrete questions, you have maybe 10 categories. And students can be broken up by interest around those categories and what they want to really grapple more deeply with. So the beauty of the model is the teacher knows that it's all around content that they need to be working with. And then the students are going to be doing digging deep activities around different aspects of that concept, and then sharing that back with the other students in the class, so everybody benefits from the bigger picture stuff. So eventually students start to develop experiments or create models or create other kinds of artifacts. So thinking of one experience where the students were fascinated by pumpkin chunking, and there was a question about velocity and trajectory, and it was sort of a physics kind of a question. So part of the really interesting development was they actually built a full-size trebuchet, which was a feat in itself and a tremendous amount of learning. And you can imagine the amount of time it took for them to do that, and mostly out of class. But then to be able to predict the distance it would go by the trajectory that the trebuchet would throw and so on. Just fascinating learning that happened. So artifacts are a big piece of it. Again, models, you can have simulated models, you can have real life models, and lots of experiments that the students created to test their ideas. So once they have these experiments, models, artifacts, and so on, then they present to the whole class and leave their hypothesis at the door for everyone to kind of pick at. So they look at what the idea was of the student, and then they're also looking at the artifacts and findings and so on, and then start to ask questions. And we also have, in that case, often brought in experts, so PhDs, professionals in the field that have expertise in what the students have been grappling with, to also ask questions of the students and really challenge their thinking. And those are probably the most exciting times in the classroom, to really see the deep level of engagement and the deep level of trying to understand or understanding of the content that we see that comes from that experience. So unfortunately, in even most of our better schools that are using inquiry, that's about the end of the process. But we want to make sure that students also know that that's really only the beginning of the process, that once you have that feedback, then you need to refine. So you need to go back and ask your follow-up questions and continue to dig and continue to experiment and look for the next iterations and continue your thinking along the product. So obviously you can't do that with every single big concept you want to teach throughout the year, but if you could do that at least once with some overarching concept that the students need to be working with for the state standards, what an incredible experience that would be, where they could really work on further iterations and continue to refine their thinking and have that experience in the classroom setting. teachers are often reluctant to do this inquiry process because I think they're afraid of the time that it takes to do these. So obviously this is a time-consuming process. And again, this is not something you do for every single thing that you want to learn. You know, I always give the example of you wouldn't do inquiry around learning the times tables. It's not probably the most valuable use of that time. But around big concepts, it really allows the students to dig deep. And the comment that I hear most often from teachers is, we have the state test and we have to get through the curriculum. Well, getting through the curriculum does not ensure that any learning at all has happened. So simply by the teachers presenting content doesn't mean that the students are learning anything. So I just would be cautious that you could spend an entire school year presenting content with no outcomes or no real benefits to student learning, as opposed to figuring out where your time would be best used to do some deep thinking work around inquiry and having students learn an immense amount that can benefit them in numerous ways.